Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brad Hynotsky. I'm a politics and government major, philosophy, law and society, and national security minors. I'm also co-president of the International Relations Club, vice president of Greek Council, member of the faculty committee, and sergeant at arms for the Sigma Chi fraternity here on campus. Thank you all for coming to the first political debate hosted by the Center of Politics and the People at Ripon College. The Center was created to promote constructive political debate, analyze public policy, and foster the encouragement of citizens in their government. Inspired by the principles of the American founders and the legacies of our great leaders, the Center will create a forum for dialogue, research, analysis, and dissemination of ideas about local, state, national, and international issues. Policymakers, academics, experts, candidates, and politicians will present and defend their ideas and solutions for the benefit of the country, people, and community. Students will learn how to pursue careers in politics and government. The electorate will find scholarly, accessible, and relevant research that connects political thought and effective governance. If you have questions about the Center, please contact our director, Dr. Lamont Colucci, sitting right over here. I would now like to point out and thank former Senator Bob Welch, who organized and put very much hard work into this incredible opportunity for all of us, our moderator. He graduated from Ripon College in 1958, elected Waushara County Circuit Judge in 1979, re-elected in 1985, and again in 1991. In 1985, he was appointed by the Wisconsin Supreme Court as Chief Judge of the 6th Judicial District, and reappointed in 1986, 1988, and again in 1990. He then was appointed to the Wisconsin Supreme Court by Governor Thompson in 1992, elected to a 10-year term in 1997, and retired in August 2007. Please join me in welcoming Justice John Wilcox.
After that introduction, Brad, I was going to say the candidates I thought were shuffling around and getting ready to leave because they're the main attraction. Thank you, Brad. Brad is also the timekeeper. We have somebody of authority here that can cut these guys off at the right time. But we're very gratified to have this evening these fine gentlemen here who are going to debate. We have the 4 Republican candidates vying for the nomination of Wisconsin's 6th District Congressional seat. Senator Joe Leibham, who is sitting here.
I just want to say this is Representative Duey Stroebel, Denow, okay, and Senator Glenn Grothman.
Each of these candidates will have an opening statement of 3 minutes, and then we'll proceed to the questions which I will pose to the candidates. You've used the note cards. I have some up here. I would encourage you to ask questions. Now, each candidate has 2 minutes to respond. Red card, meaning that your time has expired. The yellow card, meaning you have 30 seconds left.
Well, I'm Duey Stroebel, and it's a pleasure to be here. Ripon College has a fond place in my mind because I went to Badger Boys State here, and 3 of my 6 boys have gone to Badger Boys State, and I hope the next 3 also have that opportunity to come here. So, great place. But with a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work, I have had a successful career. But like a lot of people from Wisconsin, I've had my share of lean times. And when I was a young teenager, my parents divorced, and I had to grow up fast. I had to become an entrepreneur by necessity. I baled hay, I shoveled snow, I fixed cars. During that period of time, I learned that if I worked hard, I could be a success. So I went to UW-Madison, and I graduated with an undergraduate and graduate degree in business. And then in 1987, I started my business, but probably more importantly, I got married to my wife, Laura. And today we've been married for 27 years. We've got 8 wonderful children, ages 8 to 24, and I'm blessed. And really, my family and the next generation is why I do what I do. It's why I'm in this race. I didn't need a job or didn't need another title, but I want to be part of trying to make this country better for the future. Right now, our freedoms and liberties are being eroded in this country at an alarming pace, and it's something that has to stop. And I believe that a lot of that is happening because we are simply being overtaxed, we are being overregulated, and our government spends too much money. And what that is doing is it's sapping this country of opportunity. And this is the land of opportunity. This is the United States of America, the greatest country in the world. And we need to turn this ship around from the direction that I believe that we are heading right now. Now, I'm a small businessman. I come from the private sector. I'm not a career politician. And what I do in the business world is I do business plans. And what I created was a business plan here. And this is something that I'm going to be using as a guidepost during my time in Washington, D.C. And it all is geared towards the issues of overspending, overtaxation, and overregulation. And it's on my website. Please check it out. It's a very clear disclosure as to where I stand and where I'm going with this job here. Right now, we need bold conservative leaders with a new vision for this country, a vision to turn things around and to ignite this economy. And I am the person in this race that has the life skills and qualifications that make me uniquely qualified for this job. Thank you.
I was born and raised in Oshkosh. I pretty much lived there all my life, except for a short term. I was down in North Carolina. But I'm a UW Stout grad. I have a degree in industrial education with energy and transportation being my concentration. I worked for Mercury Marine as a technician in the 80s, and then I had an opportunity to advance myself by getting a job working for Chrysler Corporation as a manager. Shortly after I was hired by Chrysler out of Milwaukee, I got transferred down to North Carolina, where I lived there for 10 years, and it gave me a lot of experience working with a lot of small businesses and larger businesses in the automotive industry. And then I did a lot of my vacations. I came back to this area in the 6th District in Oshkosh because this is my home. And the people around here, I love the people, and I just love the area. And right around 2000, Chrysler, things weren't doing real well. The chances for opportunity and advancement weren't going real well. So I decided that I would look for another job coming back up here in the area that I enjoy. And I was lucky enough to find a position at Moraine Park Technical College as an instructor of engine technology. So I moved back to the area and actually started using that degree that I had. I mean, it did help me get me the job with Chrysler. I would have not got that. And by using that degree, it helped me train people in the area and work with local manufacturers. So it gave me that experience as far as an educator, and I have that experience working with manufacturers. I have the background working in business and industry, and I'm the only candidate who has those 3 areas of practical experience. So when I saw the fact that this district was opening up and Mr. Petri was no longer going to be seeking re-election, it is one of the largest manufacturing districts in the country. I felt we need people who have an understanding of manufacturing and have a background and can help support the businesses in this area. The businesses in this area, if we support them, is going to help grow, and it's going to help everybody in this district, and it's going to help our economy. So I'd like to deal with increasing our energy independence within the country, which I have experience in energy, and I'd like to help cut government spending by using industrial type process and controls that can be used in government. And I'd also like to expand education and working with industry to educate our people for jobs that are actually out there.
In Madison right now, there's 78 Republicans in the state legislature. I'm the only one of the 78 who was once a practicing lawyer. I did probate, estate planning, real estate, some tax work. And actually, I find it helpful in the state legislature. First of all, it made me more conservative, dealing with the Department of Revenue, dealing with the Department of Transportation, dealing with the DNR, and the lack of common sense that our citizens have to deal with. But in any event, after being a volunteer in Washington County, being active in the local Republican Party, I ran for the state assembly in a special election in 1993. I was the first Republican to get elected in a special election, right after Scott Walker also got elected in a special election in 1993. And after that, we formed kind of a core group of 7 or 8 conservative Republicans in the state assembly that I think had a big impact. I was fortunate enough to be the author of that was at the time the model 24-hour waiting period bill for abortions in the country. During that first cycle. We had a genuine property tax relief in 1995 that I was part of together with Luther Olson over there, who was a freshman in 1995. We also, together with Scott Walker, I was one of two of about 7 or 8 assemblymen who together stood up with the road builders. Tommy Thompson, the first thing we got in there in our first budget, wanted to put a 5-cent gas tax hike in one shot. Frank Osei, Scott Walker, and I, and a couple others stood up and said no, so we defeated that property tax increase, or that gas tax hike. But after being in the state assembly for about 11 years, one of the things that bothers me is you have Republicans who don't act like Republicans should, right? If you think of Republicans, you think of less government, respect for the Constitution. I had a state senator who just about credit across the board, got along with her okay, but was usually for more government, that sort of thing. But anyway, Mary Panzer, she was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, so I ran against her in 2004, was fortunate enough to beat her, 79% to 21%. After 4 years in the state Senate, Scott Walker got elected, and that was really a tremendous thing for me. Or 6 years, Scott Walker got elected, because then we really were able to go to work. And I was very fortunate to pass a lot of bills. When Scott Walker was there, he was author of something called the Manufacturer's Tax Credit, so that manufacturing and agriculture in this state will be income tax free by 2016, as well as several other big things. I got through a bill saying you couldn't do GPS tracking by police without a warrant. But despite my successes, I was still frustrated by what I saw was a little more liberalism on a national level. Tom Petra represented part of my state Senate district. People for a long time have been waiting for somebody to run against him. Nobody stepped up. So I decided to step up because I told him he was pretty moderate. About a week after, pretty big government-y, nice guy though, but about after a week after I declared, he dropped out, and I'm facing an entirely different group of people than I originally anticipated when I decided to run.
I believe we live in the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and every day when I wake up, I thank God for the opportunity to be an American citizen. And I thank God that my wife and now our 3 children are blessed to be part of a great state and again a great nation. But I am seriously concerned with the direction in which our nation is headed. And I'm even more concerned and disappointed with how our federal government, under both Republican and Democratic control and leadership, is failing our nation. They're failing our nation by not even being able to address any of the issues and challenges that are confronting this nation. And that disturbs me and bothers me, because the government is supposed to work for the people. And obviously they realize there are problems and challenges, but our government has become so gridlocked and so partisan that they are there not as Americans, but as kind of partisans. And that needs to change. And so I'm running for Congress as a Republican. I'm a strong conservative. But more importantly, I'm running as an American, because I want to reform our government and make our government work again for we the people of this state and of this nation. I believe I bring a good background and a life experience that will help me to be a good representative of our area out in Congress. An awesome upbringing. My parents who are here tonight raised 13 children, and they raised us based on faith, on family, on hard work, on respect to other people, on giving back to your community. And that's the person that I am today, and the person that I will be as your congressman out in Washington. Great private sector experience. I had the opportunity to work for the Sheboygan County Chamber of Commerce, and then for one of Wisconsin's great businesses, Sargento Foods. And just learned a lot at those 2 experiences about the important role that a strong business community and jobs can mean to our community and to our state. I'm humbled by the public sector experience and service that I've had as well. I've served in the Assembly and in the State Senate. And there, every day, I've worked to try to move issues forward on behalf of the residents of the 9th Senate District. And again, issues trying to make Wisconsin a better place for all of us to work, to live, and to enjoy life. Focused on economic development issues, on our budget mess down in Madison, on protecting our private property rights and our rights as citizens of this nation. As much as I've enjoyed that opportunity, again, I believe that we need some people to fight and reform our government out in Washington. And that's why I'm asking for your vote for Congress. I want to go to Washington to be a positive reformer, to make our nation and our government work again. I'll focus on the budget mess out in Washington, D.C. I'll focus on growing free enterprise and bringing more jobs to this nation and to this country. And I'll focus on restoring and focusing our government on its constitutional responsibilities. That's why I'm asking for your vote for Congress. I look forward to your questions and your issues tonight, and then I look forward to working hard to earn your vote.
What would you do about the current immigration crisis? And what is your long-term solution for immigration to the USA? And Senator Leibham, you're first.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the immigration crisis is a crisis because, again, our federal government has failed to address this issue. Both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, they've just failed to understand that by their inability to come to any type of decision or resolve on how to address this issue, the crisis is just getting worse. And now we've got this, again, unfortunate situation where children are being brought and left here in this country away from their parents and disconnected from their society or from their families. That's wrong, and this issue needs to be addressed and it needs to be fixed. First and foremost, I would require and demand that we secure the border. You have to stop the problem before it continues to grow and grow and grow. So I would support increased National Guard and military presence on the border to ensure that we are securing our border and not allowing more illegals to get in. Then I would work to try to improve our immigration system so that individuals can come to this nation and so that they can take advantage of the great opportunities that a lot of our families did and our ancestors did. Working to modernize and to make efficient our immigration system so that people can move through and earn legal status. For the individuals that are not here, again, we need to enforce the law. And when individuals break the law, there needs to be penalties. So I don't support amnesty. I don't support a pathway to citizenship for individuals that are here. They have violated the law, and there needs to be a penalty and a punishment for that. The children that are here, I believe that, again, this is an issue that shouldn't have been allowed to happen had we addressed it right on. Those children should be humanely returned to their families and to their home countries. And then their families should be encouraged and allowed to move through the legal immigration process.
Yeah, the immigration system is broke, and it has been broken for a long time. And it's just the lack of will of the career politicians, I believe, that have been there, that have looked at it and kicked it down the road. We need to take a long-term solution to this, not a short-term solution, and that's kind of a prevailing theme in what goes on here. We have to seal the borders, obviously. And although I'm not convinced that this administration has any intent to seal these borders, I mean, we are a nation of laws and we are a nation of borders. But right now, we basically have no border and we have no law in this whole area. Our administration is not enforcing the laws that we have. So as much as I think we need to seal these borders, and we certainly do, and we need to reform the system, I don't think we can really begin to reform this system until we do get those borders sealed. Now, I do not believe in a pathway to citizenship, and I do not believe in amnesty. But what we need to do first off, once we start talking about reform, is we need to keep in mind first and foremost the security of this country, and then the economic interests of this country. Those are the things that we must keep in mind. And then once we keep those things in mind, we have to look at what will make this country better, a better country. Because that's the only reason why I think we should have immigration, is to make this country better. And to have people come here that believe what our beliefs and cherish our values and are willing to contribute to this society. Now, what we need to do is, I think we need to obviously secure the borders, but we need to then, in our reforms, to achieve those goals, we need to have a verifiable system. We need to modernize the system, a check-in and check-out thing, so we can have workers that we can track and we understand where they're at, and yet they can serve the needs of the industries that we have here, for instance, the dairy industry. And then we also need to, I believe, reform the green card situation, as well as citizenship requirements, so they're based upon merit, not based upon who you know, but merit. That will ultimately, again, lead to making this country better.
Yeah, but immigration's got a lot of facets to it. There are two areas I look at. There are people who've overstayed their welcome, and there's people who have actually come across the borders illegally. Now, if someone breaks into my house, I would like them to be arrested and put back in their house or somewhere else. But if I have somebody who I've invited into my house and they stay a little longer, I probably don't really like that either, but I might give them a little bit of a break and extend their visa. The visa extension would be for somebody who did it as far as possibly a guest worker program, where we have people that are actually working and helping us in our country to work in the fields, but the only thing they did illegally was stay here too long, because one thing, we have a broken system that doesn't follow up when that visa has expired. So we need a system that's going to follow up on these people, and we failed at that. We need to have some of these guest workers And so we need that type of system. But people who have crossed the border, I think we need to send them back. They got to go back from where they came. One of the other areas is we got a brain drain situation where people come here to the country and want to get a good education in engineering areas where we need people. What we should do is try to make sure that we incentivize our own people to educate them so we don't have to have foreign workers for some of these jobs, but unfortunately that's not always the case. So instead of shipping some of these people back to their country to compete against us, we should have a practical program to keep people who are going to help build our country and make us more prosperous, have them the ability to have a path to citizenship to help us achieve that goal.
Well, the first problem we have, of course, everybody says we have to seal the borders, but you got to remember that's not as automatic as it sounds. Obviously, Barack Obama is there, but you got to remember George Bush did not worry about the borders either. And that is a problem because we have a lot of members of the business community and too many people just listening to them, not looking out for the long-term interest of America, who are for doing nothing right now because they want the cheap labor. It seems to me in the future, we of course need immigrants. We need immigrants on our farms, we need immigrants on manufacturing, immigrants in the service industries. But I will tell you, it still bothers me that George Bush did not seal those borders. At the time, there was a real shortage of Republicans in Congress who stood up and called them out on that. So they just let them, you know, do whatever some of the big farm people wanted. Now, what to do now? A variety of things. First of all, there can be no amnesty. Okay, we have two groups of people trying to get in this country. People are trying to get in legally and illegally. People are trying to get in here legally are the people filling out the forms. This is about a few years ago. You could wait 14 or 15 years in Mexico to try to get here legally. Now you got to ask yourself, as we pick the next 1 million or 2 million or 3 million or 5 million Americans, do you want the type of people who are sneaking across here, the type of people who are patiently filling out the forms legally from Mexico, Philippines, what have you? It seems to be obvious, okay? A couple other comments. I think when people do come in here, maybe need some sort of sponsorship from families, sponsorship from potential employers, that sort of thing, so we're attracting people who want jobs. We also have to do something about our out-of-control welfare system. I know somebody, his wife is from Mexico. Right now they advertise the generous welfare benefits in Mexico that we have in this country. Wisconsin still has problems because for like 20 years we were a welfare magnet for the central United States. The United States is now a welfare magnet for the Western Hemisphere. We're getting the wrong sorts of people here. The other thing I'll point out is that something, I think, a misinterpretation of the Constitution is being used right now, which they say if somebody is born here, they're automatically a citizen. Other countries don't operate that way. That's ridiculous. We got to go back to the old system.
How would you end the deficit spending and get our fiscal house back in order?
Simply cannot borrow ourselves to prosperity. And we have to get control of the size of our government. I'm a businessman, and if I ran a business the way this United States government is being run with $17 trillion in debt, and mind you, when you add the other unfunded mandates that are out there too, it really comes up to actually the taxpayer of this country owes about $100 trillion, and that's just unthinkable. I think right now, even at the $17 trillion, that's about $50,000 per person in this country. And if we ran our households like that, if we ran our state like that, we would be in trouble. So we've got to do something about that. And what that does is right now, our debt service, I believe, is about the line number 5 on our budget. And with the depressed interest rates that we have now, you can imagine what that line item will become in a short period of time. I believe that in 10 years, at the current rate, that our debt service is going to be almost, I think, $2.4 billion per day. I mean, can you imagine that? So we need to get control of that. And I, as a businessman, I've balanced budgets. I've had to, determine incomes and outflows. And that's really what it takes. It's going to take people who are willing to look long-term, not short-term, not just kick the can down the road, but actually take a long-term fix to get this problem taken care of. And right now, we just haven't had that intestinal fortitude to get that done. And I think we need to get leaders who are willing to take the bold stances to make that happen.
Well, if we're going to reduce the debt, we either need to collect more money or we have to reduce spending. And I think we need to do both. We need to do a combination of both. But I don't think we should be collecting money by taxes. I think what we need to do is grow the economy. And we've got such an opportunity to grow our economy here in this country with the natural gas and the oil. If you look at what's happening up in North Dakota, we can expand our pipelines. We can, by building the infrastructure with pipelines and building all of our energy sources, we can put more people back to work. The more people we have back to work, the more people we'll have that are actually putting money into the system instead of taking money out of the system. As far as reducing spending, having worked in business and industry, I see a lot of times there are process controls that are used that are not used in government programs and in government systems. If we would properly look at ways to make the government more efficient and cut the waste, we could collect more money in those manners as well. Some of the regulations that are happening in this country are also causing problems. I feel the CO2 regulation, which we had the executive order that was given with the EPA, is far-reaching. The CO2, the only way you're going to reduce CO2 is either you have to make a process more efficient, or you got to cut the amount of energy that you're using. And the thing is, if we cut the amount of energy and the way we do it cleaner and safer than any other country, and we're just going to transfer that wealth to places like China and India, and we should keep that here, and it also help with our national security as well.
It has to be solved, and we're not only putting our children and grandchildren's future at risk by having to pay off the debt, we are risking that the US dollar will no longer be the world's reserve currency. You have to go through things that clearly are not the federal government's purview in the first place. I think the Department of Education is something I've been very critical of federal involvement in education. There's no way they need those bureaucrats up there. I think the Department of Housing and Urban Development, to a degree, is a place where we have pork barrel spending that I think helps the big machines in the big cities. I've been a constant critic of excessive welfare. I've talked about the fact that it's not unusual for a single person with a couple of kids maybe to get a total welfare subsidy of over $40,000 a year. That's obviously out of control. And also the fact that we have an excessive number of welfare programs means we have an excessive number of bureaucrats administering those programs. That's out of control. As far as other discretionary spending, you got to do something that's politically possible. And what I've always thought doing is, you could look at the final year Bill Clinton was president. Bill Clinton was a Democrat, a liberal Democrat. But you could look at the total amount of spending there, and you could say, look, under Bill Clinton, we had schools, the children weren't starving in the streets, we had roads. On the other discretionary items, let's go back to the level of spending we had in Bill Clinton's final year. And I don't think people could argue and say it's a draconian thing to do. So on other things, do that. I think we've got to go after some of the corporate welfare. I've been a big critic of low-income housing credits, which are, I think benefit, quite frankly, the property developer more than they do the low-income people. Other sorts of corporate subsidies can go. And I also think Medicare, which is such a large share of the budget, we should look at it as we go for a more market-based approach on Medicare, which is so large, we can hopefully cause that huge segment of the budget begin to fall, and we can get back to the point where in only 14 years ago we had a balanced budget. So it's not something that's that impossible if we do these reforms.
That if America is weak economically, then the world suffers. And so a strong America economically is important for the security of not only us and our well-being, but for the well-being and the security of the world. To address the challenge and the massive debt and the out-of-control spending, I'd focus in two areas. One, reining in our government and reducing spending, and working to grow our economy so that more opportunity for our government to benefit from people working and from businesses operating in this nation could benefit us at the federal level. But really the main focus would be on reining in our government and reducing spending. Our federal government is doing far more than our Constitution ever intended it to do. And we need to rein in the scope and the focus of the federal government. That would start with programs like, quite honestly, the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare, I think that is an area of the federal government involvement that isn't necessary. The private marketplace and individual decisions should be in that area of health insurance and providing that opportunity. Obamacare is a huge cost to our government and to our nation, and it's going to, again, drain down on our economic and on our debt situation here in America. I would work to reform our entitlement programs. It pains me how we are allowing so many of our fellow citizens to get trapped into entitlement programs, and we need to require more from individuals to be responsible for themselves. We're there to help, but that should be like a trampoline where we bounce them back up instead of letting them get caught in a safety net. I'd focus on foreign aid. I think there are some areas in which we're spending too much money for countries that don't really respect or appreciate what America has done in this world. And then again, the other side of the equation would be working to grow this economy.
Mr. Denow, and this is, are you willing to challenge party leadership and support a conservative alternative to John Boehner?
I'm probably the least person who has any leadership within the Republican Party right at this point. I would not look at anything with a challenge for the Speaker of the House as far as John Boehner. I would not have any reason that I can see at this point. I know that there's a lot of disagreements with some of the things that he stands for. Personally, unless the Republican Party and the majority of the Republican Party come up with a good alternative and somebody else that they feel that should replace Senator, the Speaker Boehner, I would go along with it's a rough job, and there's always going to be things that people are disagreeing with, and I currently have no reason that I would go against. I think I may differ from the other candidates up here in that, but unless it was unanimous and we see somebody that is really going to make improvements and changes in the other way, I would say no.
So I would have no problem looking for an alternative to Speaker Boehner. When I look at the big issues I'm running on, welfare, of course, you've all heard me talk about. I have not seen the Republicans aggressively offer an alternative vision. On immigration, you just mentioned, it looked like the Republican leadership is playing footsie and looking for some sort of way to do an amnesty or something along those lines. So I think that's wrong. I talked about getting rid of the Department of Education, getting the federal government out of there. I'll bet you John Boehner was one of the guys who voted for No Child Left Behind, a big expansion of spending in education. So you go through these things and you wonder, is he the type of guy who's going to be the mouthpiece, not only the leader internally, but the mouthpiece that when people see what the Republican Party stands for, they're like, Boehner, I think we ought to be looking for somebody else. They have the ability to stand up to Republican leadership. I've stood up to Republican leadership a lot of times. Look at all the bills they introduce that sometimes butt up against what Republican leadership likes. I had a constitutional amendment on affirmative action. They don't like that. I mentioned when I first got to Madison, Tommy Thompson tried to put a 5-cent gas tax in there, and I think we would have that by now. My city still has some grass out here. You can thank me for saying no to the 5-cent gas tax. We still have grass outside. The whole state hasn't been paved over. So no, I have no problem standing up to Republican leadership, and I do think we have to look to somebody who is going to focus more on the excessive spending, somebody who's going to articulate that there's certain things that we shouldn't be doing under our Constitution. Look at the welfare, look at some of these out-of-control regulations. They should be going nuts on Obama on these trucker regulations right now, for example. And if we find somebody like that, I think it would be a good alternative. And everybody should wonder why Barack Obama's rating is still as high as it is. And every Republican should wonder why the rating of Congress is so absurdly low.
Well, as I expressed in my opening comments, our federal government is failing us, and the leadership in both parties is failing our Congress, and it's failing our nation. So I would hope that there is an individual out in Washington on the Republican side that could gain my support and gain my interest in regard to who I would believe in as to who could best, not just lead our party, but quite honestly, lead the House of Representatives, a major part of our government, and that's what the Speaker does. And we need an individual that is focused on leading and providing an articulate kind of understanding of what our conservative principles are, why we believe our conservative principles are right for the individual citizens of this nation and for our nation as a whole. And we're lacking that as a party right now, but more importantly, we're lacking leadership in our Congress, and our nation is suffering because of that. So again, my goal would be to listen and to offer advice and opportunity for an individual that's willing to step up and not only serve our party well, but more importantly, lead this nation and lead the House of Representatives. Now, regardless of who the leader is, I want to let you know, though, that I will be there every day to fight on our behalf and to ensure that the residents of the 6th Congressional District are being represented. My job isn't there to be saying yes to a leader. It's to represent all of us in this district. And I will do that. I've got a track record of that down in Madison in the legislature. In one of my first years in the legislature, Governor Thompson wanted me to vote for a specific issue that he felt was right. And I just didn't feel it was in the best interest of the citizens of my district. And so I voted no. And the governor wasn't very happy with me. And he threatened not to come to a fundraiser and not support me and things like that. And I stood firm. Then a couple years later, Governor McCallum wanted me to vote for the budget repair bill that raided the Tobacco Endowment Fund. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because it's not in the best interest of the citizens that I represent or the state of Wisconsin as a whole. I was one of only a few members of the legislature on the Republican side that voted against that raid of the Tobacco Endowment Fund. That's the type of leadership that I'll provide in Congress on behalf. I'm there to represent us, not a party, not a leader, but the people of the 6th District. America is the leader of the world, and a strong America means a strong and a safe world. And we need to be clear and concise as to, again, when we will stand against aggression and who we will stand with. And that would be one of the options or things that I would do out in Congress, is to work to ensure that we've got that leadership from the president, and also work to ensure that we've got a strong and efficient military to be able to deal with those issues that confront our nation and our security and our interests around the world.
I think it all comes down to, again, leadership. What kind of leadership have we seen in this country as far as foreign policy out of this administration? I think it all started with the apology tour right when Obama took office. I think that really set the tone for where our foreign policy was going to go. I mean, look at the leadership that was shown in the drawdown in Iraq. It just really, there was no separation agreement. There was no technology that was left there for them. We had invested all that time, all that money, all that blood, and we had to just pull out and leave that situation just to, I know there's certainly foreign powers that are a reason why what's going on too, but I believe that if we had pulled that out of that country in an appropriate manner, this had been advised by our military advisors to the Obama administration. It would be a different situation over there right now. But that being said, I mean, in the Ukraine there, that's just, again, a continuation of that weakness. We must maintain a strong and powerful military, because, of course, that does give stability to the world, and that gives the economics can thrive. It's all about leadership, and we've been seeing just way too much weakness in that area. And I think we need the sanctions to be much stronger for Putin, and he has to know that we're serious and that we mean it. And right now, I don't believe we're showing that, the will that we need to in this country to push them back.
One of the things that inspired me to run was my background that I have working with energy and fuels. I mean, I've taught classes in this area, and having an understanding of that, seeing how important that is in the whole world as far as the security of our country and what happens around the world. When I look at what's happening in the Ukraine, they want sanctions. I agree with sanctions, but the one thing they didn't do sanctions on was natural gas. Why? Because Putin owns, in the Ukraine, they have the natural gas lines that are there to supply the natural gas to Eastern Europe. So if he controls that, he controls the power. So a lot of this energy is also a control of power. So we have to look at having sanctions. We should have a way that we can try to get Eastern Europe and these countries be more independent with their energy as well, so that we can take some of that power that he has away. The other thing is our military, having us look weak. Now I don't, as I think Glenn mentioned here, that I would not support any military action in the Ukraine and that as well. But what happens is when we have a military that we start cutting down and making it look weak, I think of the kid that gets bullied in the schoolyard. If you look weak and you're easy to be picked on, that person's going to be taken advantage of. So we need to have our country, and we need to have the countries in Eastern Europe at least look strong so that they aren't taken advantage of.
What would the U.S. policy be on Iran and the threat of them acquiring a nuclear capability?
Well, we can't allow Iran to obtain nuclear capabilities and nuclear power and a nuclear bomb. And so, I believe that we need to be much more aggressive in regard to, again, first and foremost, even stronger sanctions. Sanctions are working. I think you need to make it clear that if that threat continues to exist, that the United States of America is prepared, and it's not an easy decision, but is prepared to take military action against Iran if they move forward in their development of a nuclear bomb. the security risk and the devastation that that could bring to the world, to our good partners in the Middle East like Israel, we need to make it clear that the United States will do everything to ensure that they do not gain that nuclear capability of producing a bomb. And again, I think we need to be aggressive first and foremost in our sanctions, in our efforts to try to find a resolve there. But I think military action would be necessary. If necessary, it would be an appropriate action for us to take.
I was very disappointed to see that we were again going to be giving Iran more time to, quote, negotiate where they are in terms of their nuclear accord, because I think there's a lot of experts out there that are saying this is just giving them more time to develop the technology they need to make a nuclear bomb. And I'm very, very concerned that, you know, we're just being duped here in this negotiation process. And again, I think this comes with leadership and you know, where we stand in the world. Again, without showing leadership, we are making the world a more dangerous place. And I think we certainly have an extremely close ally in Israel that is at risk from this nuclear bomb that they could very well be developing. We've certainly seen that Iran has been a source of terrorism throughout the world. And I think it's just inconceivable to think that they could potentially end up having a nuclear bomb. So we really do need to act. We do need to stop, I guess, just, you know, passing the buck and letting this discussion go on. And what happens? Pretty soon we find out they created this thing. So we need strength. We need a strong military. We need to be aggressive. And I think that potentially Israel may be the one that will have to go and take care of that problem there. And I think as our ally, we are going to have to be strong supporters of them, because we have a lot of common foes, and they are right in the middle of it there. And unfortunately, it's just a situation that we have to prevent from occurring.
I think Iran's policy and with nuclear weapons is the United States is not going to, in my opinion, or I would not support the United States as far as going in military action at all in Iran for that situation, but I would believe that the Israelis probably would, because they're going to be the direct threat. So that would not help out anybody in the entire world. So we need, you know, everybody that we can get on board and to help along with these sanctions in order to try to reduce this from happening. And we need to have inspectors. We need to make sure that things are, you know, going well, and we have to do whatever we can to try to reduce that nuclear threat that they have.
Right, well, it's important that Iran not develop nuclear weapons, not only because we don't want Iran to develop nuclear weapons, but it's been made clear by other countries in the Middle East that if Iran has nuclear weapons, they'll want nuclear weapons as well. For example, Saudi Arabia. And it's kind of amazing, if you'll think about it, that we've gone 70 years since the end of World War II and no one has, you know, let off a nuclear weapon in anger or whatever, in a wartime type thing. But the more countries that have them, the more likely something is to happen. I'll say a strong military in general deters people from doing anything. I think the comments from the president, kind of the equivocating comments on Gaza, send the message that maybe the United States doesn't care as much about Israel as they used to. That sends the wrong message. I think we ought to be clear that we're standing with Israel. I know there was a time where Israel destroyed a nuclear reactor in Iraq, and the whole country at least pretended to be upset about it. The United States has to make it clear they'll stand by Israel. Something like that has to be done again, because right now Iran, even though there are, I can't remember exactly how many miles, but several countries away from Israel, still want to destroy Israel, which is kind of almost a psychological problem or something in a country that far away. But I think a combination of those things will prevent a bomb like that from being developed again. To a certain extent, we're hostage of our intelligent capabilities, but if our intelligent capabilities show that they're getting near having a weapon, I think we have to say that we're going to stand with Israel if they take that weapon out. And I think the other thing maybe we can do is look to get a little bit more involved in the regime that is running Iran, because the ultimate long-term example, the long-term goal has to be to have maybe more pro-Western government in Iran. You know, it's easy it's hard to forget, you can easily forget that 40 years ago, Iran was a pro-Western nation. And at the time, I believe, I'm not sure of this, I believe there were more Iranian students in American universities than any other country.
This is an excellent one again, as the last one. What is the appropriate energy policy for our future? Please speak specifically to fuel sources. And we'll start out this one with Senator Representative Stroebel.
I think the energy policy for this country has to be any and all energy. I think we need to open up our markets. We need to have free markets. And right now there seems to be the government with mandates picking winners and losers. Some energy sources, the favored ones, get subsidies, and other energy sources get whacked with regulations that are untenable. And right now, I used to think energy was the Achilles heel of this country, but it's really not anymore. We have abundant energy resources, and we have to take advantage of those resources. Out in North Dakota, where the fracking's going on, we need to encourage that as much as we can. And the free market is what does that. Because when we can drive down our energy costs, we can grow this economy. Because as a small businessman, I understand the margins that all our small businesses have to live with. And if energy costs go up, that means that business has less of a chance of being successful. It's not going to maybe be able to hire more people, buy more equipment, or give that wage increase. So energy is extremely important. We need to take advantage of all the sources that we have here. And we don't need to regulate it and pick winners and losers. And one of the things that we've done in this state was in a standalone bill, we put a renewable energy requirement in the state of Wisconsin, which required 10% of our energy to come from a renewable energy source. And I think that's wrong, because what it did is it raised the cost of our energy. In fact, studies indicate that it raised that cost by almost $800 million. And I know what a crushing effect that has on the businesses in this state. So again, that's government picking winners and losers. I think it's wrong. I don't think we should have done that, because all it does is it inhibits the growth of our economy and kills economic development and job growth.
Thank you. Mr. Denow?
Energy, well, natural gas is one of the big things that we can develop, and oil, such as what's up in the Balkan and North Dakota, because natural gas and oil are intermingled. We have so much opportunity with natural gas. We can run trucks on it. We can build that infrastructure. We can be an independent country as far as our energy if we would just expand a lot of these energy uses that we have. And we can do it safer, and we can do it better than others. We need pipelines. I think it was today I was talking about pipelines and the Keystone pipeline, that should be built, that should be run. It's the safest way. Pipelines are the safest way. We're putting it on trains, which is causing an environmental problem that is much worse than running things through pipelines. Pipelines are more efficient. They've been a better way of transferring oil and natural gas for years. We have to look at all aspects, though. We got to also look at wind. We can look at solar. Those are things, though, they are not high energy output. It's a good opportunity for people to put those on, use those on their homes to reduce their home amount of energy they're using in their homes in different areas. So we can look at that, but I think to actually help subsidize it is not a very, we have to look at the subsidies very carefully, because it's not efficient and we're not building our country the way we could if we would. And we're spending, one of the examples I always say is we got electric cars right now that are hybrids that we end up giving tax breaks to people for buying those, but now we're looking at a way to tax them for the mileage they're using to help pay for our roads. Stuff like that, to me, just does not make any sense, and we got to have something more sensible policy with the energy and how we use it.
The United States has the potential to be, such a huge provider of energy to the world. You build that Keystone pipeline, and we're in a position whether it be natural gas or oil. We can be really a dynamo in the world. You have to let the free market go. I think the United States will be in great shape. I think we need a little bit of leadership on some of these environmental issues. I think we have to do a better job of explaining to the children and people of this country how much cleaner our air is than it used to be, how much cleaner is our water is than it used to be, how safe all these technologies are, so that people, do not get afraid of them and realize that over time we can have cheaper energy and all the jobs that extracting that energy will create. I think nuclear energy as well. It's too bad they largely stopped building nuclear power plants in this country. There's another thing that is clean, makes America more self-sufficient. So that's my opinion on energy.
Well, our energy policy needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed based on science and on economics, and not on political correctness. And sometimes I think our government at all levels kind of gets caught up in developing policy based on what they think is politically correct more than what is economically or scientifically smart. I believe that we need to have a much more greater presence in getting our energy from our country and domestically. Our reliance on foreign fuel is not only a security threat, but it kind of discourages economic growth and opportunity here in our nation. So I would first and foremost be opposed to any further movement by the President or by the EPA to move forward with CO2 reductions, the emission reductions. Coal is a natural resource, and it is an energy source that we can benefit from and need to use here in America and in Wisconsin specifically. We can provide good, clean energy through coal. And I was just at Alliant Energy a couple of weeks ago, and they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars, not even through a government mandate, but they want to be a good steward in providing the coal-based energy that they do. So they're installing scrubbers to make their energy even more smart and more clean. I would support the expansion of drilling for oil here in America and in our resources. I would support the expansion of nuclear power. At the state level, I'm the Senate author of a bill that would eliminate the moratorium on nuclear power here in our state. And I think we need to move forward with nuclear options in America. Strong supporter, obviously, of the Keystone Pipeline, and again, the benefit that would bring to natural gas and to oil. And on top of those opportunities, I would not support government subsidies, whether it be for wind or ethanol. Again, I think that our energy choices need to be market-based, and there shouldn't be subsidies from the government to make those products more attractive one way or another. That should be a market-based
To
decision.
what extent should the EPA control greenhouse gases?
The EPA should have any control over, well, when you say greenhouse gases, that's one thing. I taught classes in emissions. Usually we're talking CO2. What is CO2? CO2 is carbon dioxide. Everybody breathing here is putting it out right now. It's just a natural byproduct of any type of combustion and basic energy that is going to be out there that you're going to have. It is considered the greenhouse gas we also have methane, which is greenhouse gases as well, but that's the main one. And the only way you reduce CO2 is going to be either make something more efficient or you reduce the amount of energy. Stop breathing. So if you stop breathing and you don't breathe as much, you're going to reduce the amount of CO2 when you're using fossil fuels, that is. So, or anything that burns, whether it's wood or all these. The thing is, the global climate change, everyone agrees about climate change. Okay, everyone agrees that there is, well, I shouldn't say everyone agrees that there's climate change, but the thing is, the matter of degree that is man-made. There are so many things that will affect what is happening with climate change. Even the climate experts cannot agree on how much the man-made is man-made because of the burning of carbon dioxide. So what happens is it becomes a political issue. And the political issue is that they pick winners and losers. If you are going to be somebody who deals with green energy and you're going to deal with some of these other things, then you believe in the carbon exchanges, those are the people that are supporting the people who believe this. I believe that the CO2 and that is mainly a political thing. I think we need to reduce the amount of use of everything and increase the efficiency, but I think it's being played for political gains.
They're sounding over the top. I do not consider global warming to be man-made, and I think it's been completely exaggerated. When I was in a few years ago when Governor Doyle was the governor, I was the senator, and wind up kind of being out in front of foiling his plan to make Wisconsin the international center of preventing global warming. I don't like the coal regulations. I think we have to do a better job on all these things of educating the children, how clean our air is compared to the way it used to be. We also have to do a better job explaining how much cleaner our power plants are than power plants in other countries, and insofar as we push other factories abroad, I think we have to do a better job explaining to people that if things done in our factories are done abroad, almost certainly those factories abroad will be polluting at a far greater rate than any factories around here. The same thing is true, by the way, of almost anything else that's done abroad, mining being another example. Yep, I guess that's it. We're still not going to get rid of the EPA, but I do think we have a better job of educating the people, and I do think we have to make it clear that we do not believe that this global warming, so-called man-made global warming, which doesn't exist, is not a big problem. We're not going to allow the United States to get roped in any silly international treaties in which we're going to wind up enforcing things on ourselves that aren't going to be enforced abroad.
I don't see an expanded role for the EPA in regard to CO2 or greenhouse emissions, and I actually think they're going too far in their over-regulating of business and of opportunity here in Wisconsin and across the United States of America. I think I visit with the business as often as I can just to kind of understand the impact that government is having on them, and consistently the over-regulation, especially on environmental and on emission issues, are causing a lot of our businesses in Wisconsin to not grow and expand here. And they're searching and looking to grow in other states, or quite honestly in other nations, and we're doing ourselves a disservice in regard to that over-regulation. So again, I don't see a need for the amount of regulation that's there. One of the things that I would do is I'd say, let's unleash, as I said earlier, free enterprise and entrepreneurialism, and allow businesses to do what they want to do here in America. Most businesses that I visit with, like I mentioned Alliant Energy last week, I visited with. I was with the Kohler Company. Well, they want to be good, contributing stewards to our environment. They're businesses, but they're part of the environment as well. And so if we give them the ability to keep more of their money, to invest more, they're going to work to make their business the most efficient and the most environmentally sensitive as it can. We should be encouraging businesses like the company in Fond du Lac that's developing high technology so that when you're in your house or in your business, computers know when to turn the lights on and when to turn them off. I mean, there's some unbelievable technology that's out there that can help in our energy usage and in our emissions. And that's the type of support and encouragement that we have to give as a government, is to let that free market work. Again, we as individuals, businesses, they want to be a good steward. And we just have to unleash the opportunity for them to be able to do that.
I am not personally a believer in man-made global warming. Certainly we see trends in our climate, and those have been going on for many years. And carbon levels right now, my understanding, are actually down to where they were in 1992. So we've been making great progress in that area and continue to. But again, it seems like the most developed nations actually are the ones who are most effective at controlling the pollution in their countries. And I think that's a reason why we need to continue to develop, because we do care about the environment, and we will take care of the environment. I really believe this is all kind of part of the war on fossil fuels that this administration has, that is again picking winners and losers. And it's an overreach of the federal government. It's just one more way that the federal government is getting in our lives and attempting to control our lives through regulation and driving up costs for these things that, of course, again, they're hurting our businesses, and thus they're hurting economic growth, and that is not good. I believe in the free markets. That's what we have to allow to work. When you talk about carbon taxes, who pays a carbon tax? Well, it's people. And so it always comes down to people and their pocketbooks. And I believe that we are good stewards. I believe in some degree of regulation, but right now we've got overreach by far. But again, I want to go back to the mandate for renewable fuels that we have in this state. And we're talking about free markets, but I just don't understand, Joe, how we voted in Glenn, how we voted to require our utilities to provide 10% through renewables, but yet we're expounding upon free markets and why that's a good thing. We're supposed to let our free markets do what they want. Because we certainly did in the state of Wisconsin. We dictated to them how they were going to create a portion of their energy. I think that's wrong.
Congressman Ryan has recently launched an initiative aimed at addressing poverty. How would you address the issues facing those families who have been stuck in poverty for multiple generations?
I am on record as saying one of the reasons people are stuck in poverty is because the poverty programs are too generous. I mean, I don't care what you look at. You talk to the person in the local Pick and Save or whatever, and they'll tell you the people who are on the food share, on the government, are buying better food than the people who aren't. And in a lot of places around the state, you can buy food stamps for 50 cents on the dollar. It's not rocket science. If you're going to be better off eating better food, you're going to adapt that lifestyle. Low-income housing. It's not unusual to wind up building nicer buildings than the old 90 or 100-year-old apartments that people have who are in low-income housing. You look at the medical care. The medical care for the poor, you don't have the big deductibles and co-pays you do on private sector when you get a job. So one more time, we're putting people on the welfare type of thing in better shape than people who aren't. It's not rocket science. You just got to make these programs not so generous. And if the programs weren't so generous, the people would get off of them. Another problem we have with these programs is the huge anti-marriage penalty. You know, I've talked about the fact that a young person who has kids, they can take a $35,000 or $40,000, or at least a $35,000 hit by getting married. I mean, you know, the surest way to wind up in poverty forever is to wind up, in broken homes. You know, there are some people who do a wonderful job with it, but it'd be better off if we didn't have them. And right now the government is paying people to live in broken homes because they take such a big penalty if they get married. So the easiest way to break the cycle of poverty, which I'm not sure Paul Ryan exactly gets all the way, is to make the programs not so generous. The final thing, by the way, is that earned income tax credit is too generous. There are people right now getting like a $9,000 check in April. Ridiculous.
And it's actually failing our citizens more than it's helping them. It's entrapping them in government programs. And so a big part of the Congressman's plan is that he would allow states to be looking at out-of-the-box ideas and programs to be able to help those of our fellow citizens that are going through struggling times. So I think that's a good first step because, as with most programs, when the federal government's involved in it, it becomes far too bureaucratic, and the resources that we put into it are caught out in Washington instead of actually helping the individuals that we're trying to help. But the best thing that we can do in this nation to reduce poverty is to allow opportunities for jobs to be created. People need to work, and we need to create opportunities for people to use their talent. With that talent, they will earn jobs, or receive jobs. With jobs, they'll earn an income. And with that income, they get to support themselves and their families and be in control of their own destiny instead of being controlled by government entitlement programs and government subsidies. So that would be a main focus of mine is, again, as I said, working to open up this economy so that businesses, both small and large, can grow and can be created, and they can create opportunities for our fellow citizens to work. We all have ability. We all have ability. And we have to require individuals and motivate individuals to use that ability to work. Even in our entitlement programs, we need to have a work requirement. Regardless of your walk of life, you should be working and using your talent to earn part of the support that you get. And that's not only good for us as a nation, but it's good for them. Work is a great thing to build self-satisfaction and motivation and responsibility. And that's what we need to have as our main focus in our welfare, is encouraging people to understand their skill, their talent, and to motivate them and require them to use that to be able to support themselves. So that would be, again, a focus there, is to, our safety net shouldn't be a net, it should be a trampoline, where we bounce people back up and require them to be on their own feet, not caught in a safety net.
I like Congressman Ryan's plan because what it is, it's a discussion is what it is. And I think there's a lot of good points in there. There are some points in there that I do not agree with, but there are some points that I think are very worthy of discussion. Some of those things are getting the private sector more involved in these types of programs. And I think that the states have a much better pulse on what is needed in their states than the federal government, and not the one-size-fits-all situation that we oftentimes get out of the federal government. So I think that's a benefit. There's a lot of good things to look at there. There's waste, fraud, and abuse. There's duplicity with programs. There's a lot of good things there to begin a discussion. And I think that's a great way to go about it because, as I said, I work with business plans And this is really a plan the exact same way. And you have to have a plan to know what you're doing. I think oftentimes in politics we just throw this bill up, throw that bill up, throw that bill up, and the sum total is a mess. And that's why I think if we have a plan to proceed with, that's the professional and business way to go about running a government that we just haven't been doing enough of. But I think the most important thing we need to do here, and I think Paul Ryan will acknowledge this in a heartbeat, is we got to grow this economy. People want a hand up. They don't want a hand out. Now, I understand we are a compassionate country, and we provide for the people who can't take care of themselves at the very bottom. But again, we need to provide incentives for work, and people need to understand that that safety net is something that they can't get comfortable on. They'd much rather be working than on that safety net, and that's what we need to do. But we need to grow this economy, we need to create jobs, and I believe we need to deal with, again, our taxation policy and our regulation policy. And that's going to allow this economy to grow and have the opportunity that people are longing for, so they can live the American dream and don't have to be on the dole.
I like the proposal that he has. We have so many different programs that are out there that are trying to help people in poverty, but this actually takes them all and starts putting them together. And there are a lot of things, so we can look at it closer, so they can come up with their own innovative ideas to help reduce the amount of poverty we're going to have with a lot of the people that are out there. And the costs can start going down. I mean, you're not going to just see the reductions into our economy. And what we need to do is get training for the people that are in these programs and help get them set up with jobs that is going to benefit everybody.
So this is the last question. And this one, and I've been reading about your campaigns, you've all taken some kind of a term limit pledge. How do you expect to accomplish anything for the country or for our state when seniority still matters in the terms of allocation of power in Congress? And the first one is Senator Leibham.
Well, you work as hard as you can when you're there to get stuff done, and you don't sit on your hands like is happening out in Congress today. You recognize that you're there to do work for the people of this nation and to resolve the problems that are confronting this nation. I support term limits for our representatives and for our senators out in Washington, D.C. I think that's a good thing. It will force our government and our representatives, our senators, if they're truly going there to make a difference, then they'll work hard to make that difference during that time period. I've been in the state Senate for 12 years, and I feel very good about what I've been able to get done and accomplish during that time period. A 12-year period gives you the ability to not only get your feet on the ground, but to then work to move into leadership. I've been on the Joint Finance Committee. I'm currently one of the leaders of the state Senate. I've been chair of most of the economic development job committees, the transportation committee. In a 12-year period, you can get a lot done if you're focused on doing the things that you're saying, that you tell your voters and your constituents you're going to do when you're in the legislature or in Congress. And again, this wasn't an easy decision to come to necessarily, because I believe voters ultimately should have the right, but our federal government is such a mess right now. The individuals there are there for their own well-being and for their own best interest instead of the interests of this nation. And it needs to be shaken up, and we, the people, need to take that government back. And I think right now, a 12-year term limit for those in the Senate is the best way in which we can try to unleash this government from just the hostage taking that's been done by special interests and by personal interests. They're there to fight for us, the people, and they're not doing that right now. And so that's why I would support term limits too, to shake up our government and to reform it.
Well, I have always supported term limits, and I wrote an op-ed a few weeks ago regarding my support for term limits, and I'm happy to see that everyone in this race, after I wrote that op-ed, jumped on in favor of term limits too, because I know that that's the direction that this country needs to go. Now, I'm not going to tell you specific terms. I know I've limited myself. If I have the good fortune of being reelected again, I've limited myself to 10 years. But as far as what's best for Congress, I think that's a debate that we can have. But I do believe that whatever that rate amount is set at, it's going to be good for this country. It's going to be something that we really do need. I believe that our founding fathers, of course, intended for citizen legislators, for people who come from the real world, who actually go into government and they legislate, and then they ultimately come back to the real world. And I think there's a lot of benefits there because certainly once people know they're going, they know they're done. I mean, I come from the private sector, and boy, you got to get things done. You don't have time to waste. You don't have time to pontificate and talk about things. We need action, and right now this federal government needs action. There's a lot of things that are broken. There are a lot of things need to be fixed. Quite frankly, I think the career politicians got us into this mess, and I don't think the career politicians are going to get us out of this mess. That's why I look to our founding fathers and their focus on citizen legislators, and I understand where they're coming from. Incredibly smart men they were.
The fact that all this money that goes into the campaign, you get elected, you got 2 years, now they're going to start campaigning again. So you're continually going to be on a campaign schedule. Why not have a 4-year term and have a couple of 4-year terms? So that is something also that I would look at and think is not a bad idea to bring across so we get support. Personally, myself, if I was in the position where I was elected, I would at least feel that you need 4 years in order to get something done. 2 years I don't think is enough to get something done, and I would not care for more than, I think, to do this job just to be a citizen legislator. After 6 years, I feel that I'd be honored if I had that many years of service to help the people of the district.
When I run for this job, my attitude is if we even have 4 years to turn around this country, we'll be very lucky. We have such huge problems. I know what they try to do to you in Washington. I'm sure it's what they try to do to you in Madison. They promise you to just shut up and do what leadership says, that in 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 years you'll get a neat committee assignment. And that's kind of the carrot they hold out there to make you go away and shut up. When I look at the welfare in this state, the number of people on food stamps going up from, everybody in the back is looking like, what's he saying? That's why. No, when I look at the people in this country, when I look at the number of people on food stamps going up from 17 million people in the year 2000 to 49 million people today, we do not have 10 or 12 or 16 years to turn this thing around. We've got to turn around the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to have so many people on the roll that the responsible party is never going to be able to, again, win an election. Same thing through with the debt. You know, we want the dollar to be the world's reserve currency. We do not have 10 or 12 or 14 years, and wait and see who's the committee chair at that time, to turn this thing around. We have to act quickly. I got to respond to a couple other things here. My good friend Tom, it is great. It's tough to have an election up every 2 years. When I was first elected to the state assembly where you had a 2-year term, I thought, 2 years. But somebody pointed out that in the average job, you can get fired any day. At least you get elected to the House of Representatives. I know I have a job for 2 years, so we should be expanding. That's enough. Final thing, Representative Stroebel, the idea that, because I've been in the legislature a long time, not lost touch, only I have been on a bill in the last 2 years trying to rein in that renewable energy mandate. Representative Stroebel's been in the legislature for over 3 years. He hasn't introduced any legislation, but he even signed into my legislation. I was using that as a prime example of me being around too long.